Okay. I'll tell you what. See, oh, microphone and everything, fantastic. One thing I don't want to do is get in the way of this lot, because obviously some incredible artwork which we're going to be showing up on the screen. I think. Would you like us to sit up on the stools so you can see him?
Yeah.
Or down below? I think on the stools as well. I think that sounds like a plan, doesn't it? As soon as we've done some signings out there, so there was that. Oh, and we'll bring these a little bit closer in.
You show me where you want my butt to sit.
Right there, sir. Right there. And there you go.
That down. Oh, sorry.
Right.
Hello.
So hello there, everybody. You can come a bit closer, of course. We don't bite, we don't smell. He doesn't smell, so do come closer by all means. We would love to have you a little bit closer so we can see the whites of your eyes. And of course we should have some more people joining us in the back as well. But, hello there everybody. How is everyone enjoying ICE 2017? You okay? You enjoying it?
It's very cool.
It's very cool.
Hey, get that out of the way now.
It's a very nice venue as well, and we're really enjoying it, and we're having a great time here in Birmingham. Especially the person that's joining us for our conversation now, considering this is his first time in Birmingham, and indeed in Europe generally.
Yes, this is my first time out of North America.
Is there a reason in terms of, do you not just like us or something, or?
Well, no. No, I am terrified of flying.
That would do it.
Yes, so getting me to go anywhere in a plane takes a lot, but honestly, when the opportunity arose to come over here, we do stuff on my website. We sell books, so I try to be very active in social media, and everyone in the UK has been so good to us. You see, and so kind. Like, it's not just a stereotype that you guys are awesome. Like,
that means if we're really lucky, we'll have the man back again. So there we go. Right, quick introduction. My name's Leonard Sultana. I run a website called An Englishman in San Diego. It's about San Diego Comic-Con and con culture. And I get the chance to speak to some incredible people, especially artists and writers from comics. But it's an actual, genuine honour to speak to this guy, John Tyler Christopher, everybody. A round of applause.
Thank you.
No worries. The reason why I'm really excited to talk to you is because not only am I a massive fan of your artwork, as I'm sure everybody in the room is, but also to find out more about you, because there does seem to be this thing online when it comes to your, I mean, you say that you're active on social media. There is this kind of almost this feeling that you did a couple of D&D covers and then boom, you were next thing you know we're doing Marvel covers. And it clearly wasn't that. There was a lot of hard work and effort to get to where you are at this point in your career. And I'd like to basically cover not only what you're doing now, but also go back a bit and talk about how you did get into. I mean, let's go sort of like back a bit in terms of your art history. I mean, was it art or was it comics that really kind of got you picking up the pencil?
Well, I mean, so even as a child,
yeah,
the only thing I ever wanted to do when I grew up was draw. I never wanted to be like an actor. I never wanted to sing or play sports. I wanted to draw, and I mean, to the point where like I was making books from. I mean, I don't remember a world without Star Wars. Like, Star Wars was a major influence on me even as a child. In fact, Return of the Jedi is the first movie I remember seeing in the theater with my dad. But all I would do is draw, and it's all I ever really wanted to do. And as I grew up, you know, I started to discover other comic books. I'm a child in the '90s, so.
Yeah, what books were you looking at?
Well, one of the first things that really got me into comics, honestly, was I was like in 6th grade, and it was when Death of Superman came out. And a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you should check out, like, they're killing Superman." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Like, I just have a passing interest. But I think that story especially, like, really kind of hit me of like, there's more to this. And I mean, yeah, it's sad that like
it's not just capes, it's not just funny books. There's some real
there's weight to it.
Yeah.
And as I started to get into that, you know, again as a child of the '90s, like X-Men #1, there will never be a book that impacted me probably as much as that. But then as I started to like learn more about comics, and as I was getting older, artistically, comics kind of help turn how I view art. When I was in high school, all I wanted to do was be Jim Lee. I mean, you can see in like the art from like the old '90s action figure packaging that I've done. Like, that's what I used to want to draw, like that Jim Lee, and then it kind of evolved into like I really fell in love with Ian Churchill's run on Cable, and I just thought that was like the pinnacle of awesomeness.
You just mentioned one of my favorite artists, so I'm now grinning from it.
Ian's is amazing. But I had this really weird moment of like, well, I can see like an influence of Ian's from Jim, but then like, so who does Jim Lee want to be? And then I discovered Art Adams, and it's like, wow, like there's so much of Art's work in Jim's that you can see that inspiration. Yeah, well then who did Art Adams want to be? And I started like going back, and it became this weird thing where my art teachers who were always telling me like, study the masters.
Well, that's the other question I was going to ask, because it's not the overriding thing that I've discovered, but there's a large majority of comic book artists that weren't encouraged by their art teachers. There's no money in it. They just do traditional illustration. Were you encouraged at school to do comics, or what was?
In general, no. I come from a very small town, and my parents were always very supportive of me. But pretty much outside of my immediate family, I was met with a lot of like, "You're not going to be able to do this. Like, that's not a feasible dream.
Yeah.
You should try playing football, or that's doable. Art is not." But no, I had a lot of key people in my life, though. I had Marvel ran an article where they wanted me just to talk about these new trading cards that I'm working on, these trading card covers, and I looked at it as an opportunity because I had a history with the original Marvel Masterpiece line and my 8th grade science teacher, who was a gentleman who saw my passion and saw what I was able to do, even as cheesy as it was in 8th grade, and he actually commissioned me to do a Psylocke trading card of the Marvel Masterpiece, like redraw it. And it had a huge influence in me because it really was one of those moments where I'm being told by everyone that I'm around that like, it's cute that you do this, but don't get hooked on this. And here was somebody like, no, you can totally do this. I will give you money to do it. And that had a huge influence on me, and it kind of stuck in the back of my head. And even as I kind of grew up, I have to give credit.
How old were you at this point? I mean,
this was 8th grade,
okay.
So I was maybe 12, 13.
Oh, right, okay.
And then from there, I kind of started to meet most of my other teachers, again, not really that much, but my high school art teacher, a lady by the name of Nancy Geyer at the time was her name, she influenced me tremendously. She is somebody who saw what I was doing, and she actually worked with the administration to get me out of other classes to take more art classes.
Wow.
And she just kind of said, you draw. As long as you draw, you have to write a contract at the beginning of the semester. As long as you adhere to that contract and fulfill your deadlines, we're good. And those were two people that, Bill Douglas being the science teacher, and then Nancy in high school, had a massive influence on me. And it really meant a lot to me, again, to say, you can do this. This is something, we believe in you. That even, after I graduated high school, I was getting kind of beat down, and I did the whole traditional college thing, right? I went to Purdue University. I studied theoretical math and philosophy, and I just kind of did it. Like, I wasn't passionate about it, and honestly, with about a semester to go, I literally just dropped out of college because I'm like, this is not, like, I don't.
Did you have something in terms of art to actually fall into at that point? Where was your art at that point when you did drop out?
My art was me doodling at home.
Wow.
This was around also actually the time that I met my wife. And in fact, we kind of met because of me art, and I was like, hey, you look like this character maybe that I want to draw. Maybe you should come over and model for me sometime.
and you fell for this. Congratulations. Excellent.
But no, so like, I really wasn't doing much, but my wife had a friend who went to the Art Institute of Seattle, a gentleman by the name of Mike Moon, and he was really adamant. Like, he was another one of those people that, like, he came over and he saw my stuff, and he's like, you really should be doing something with this. Like, you have an ability to go somewhere. and that meant a lot. So
When was the first time that you actually started believing in yourself in terms of your art? Because, like you say, there's that moment when you sort of go, you know what, they may have a point. Do you know when that was, or when that first piece, when you just went, you know what, that works?
I'm still kind of waiting for that.
Oh, wow, really?
No,
Wow.
I guess again, like coming from my background, I'm still in awe at all of this. I get giddy when Marvel contacts me and they're like, we want you to draw so and so. Like, it's a very surreal experience for me, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities. I'm kind of constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, or to kind of wake up and be like, wow, you're like, this isn't really what I'm doing. So I don't know. I mean, it's just such a weird experience for me. Like I said, I mean, I guess when you get your entire life told like you're not going to do it, to be able to now do it. Yeah, but anyways.
Sorry, we skipped a little bit there. Okay, so you had the job, or you were introduced to a job by a friend of yours.
Yeah, to go to the Art Institute, and I studied 3D animation. And I did that for a semester and absolutely hated it. So I basically started becoming like the concept artist at the school. Like I would like design stuff here and there. Like that became more my focus. That wasn't really part of the curriculum, but like that's more, I think they kind of encouraged me to do that.
Actually, I'm surprised that the 3D animation didn't quite, because I mean certainly the way that you draw certainly physiques, and I mean the thing that strikes me always in your art is that it's not kind of bombastic bodybuilding. It's not like the superhero body. Sorry, the completely unreachable physique. It's almost realistic physiques. And I thought the 3D animation section of actually building physique in your artwork, which is very naturalistic.
Oh, thank you very much.
Sorry, just to let you know, we are going to blow smoke up his ass for the duration of this conversation.
No, I mean, my brain doesn't work in 3D, if that makes sense. Like, I know how to lie to make something look 3D, but the people that are like the sculptors, like they have nothing but my respect, because they perform magic to me. Like, it's not, I can look at something and say, okay, this is how you would make it a two-dimensional in a drawing, but the idea of actually formulating that in a three-dimensional space, like, it just doesn't work. Like, I remember I noodle a lot.
Yeah.
And I would push this one little point in the z-axis, and then I'd be like, well, now it's messed up in the x-axis, and now I'd have to turn it, and I would kill myself going into it. But no, so I was doing that. I was doing a lot of the art. I remember I actually worked with a professor there that he let me kind of assist in teaching the class, and I learned a lot from working with students in the figure drawing and stuff like that. And again, there's something like, I was never exposed to figure drawing before I went out there, and that was such a huge experience. To be able to work with like a model and really study the form, because when I was going kind of that reverse thing and discovering the Rembrandts and the master painters and things like that, you're emulating a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yeah.
And now when you're actually working with like life model, and like that's when I really got into like, I'm gonna go sit on the corner in a coffee shop and draw people, and like you really learn so much about how the world works, like how like physicality works. So that became a thing, and so I was doing that, and I graduated from there, and I got an associate's degree, and I was just doing like freelance, and I started working with a company called Luster, and I was doing advertisements and work with Ford and those kind of places doing.
Yeah, because I think that's where people are curious about certainly the background to actually the road to, because you have a background in advertising, don't you?
Yes, and that's where this all kind of stems from. But I've always kind of had a mind of, my philosophy was always like, look at what the trends are and do the exact opposite. So like when I graduated from school, everyone was put in these like little rooms, and like there was like 5 people in a room, and you set your little table up, and it was kind of like a mini con, right? Yeah. Well, I was like, well, wait, I'm here at a school that teaches all these different disciplines. There's going to be empty rooms. Can I have one of the rooms? And if I get one of the rooms, can I get one of the music students to DJ it for me in my room? Can I get the culinary students to cater it? And they're like, well, that would give them exposure too, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. And so I literally threw a party for my graduation. Like everyone else was standing there with their tables, and I was kind of starting to get some resistance from that. Like some of the other students were like, well, "This isn't very fair." Well, the power blew in their rooms, not mine.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, why don't you guys all come in here and we can all share this?" And then everyone was able to get the exposure. Like it's not about. I wasn't trying to like one up people, but I really wanted to like do something that separates yourself from the rest of the pack. I mean, everyone always, I think, follows a certain line and follows what's going on, but I always want to try and be somebody different. And advertising really helped kind of reinforce that, enable me to focus it in an intelligent manner, in a more like focused, like, all right, this is how you can stand yourself out. Because as what I do right now, I'm a cover artist, and I don't feel that it's fair to other comic book artists to consider myself a comic book artist, because they have a skill set that I do not possess. Their ability to tell a story with art.
I'm going to lead on to that, because I want to talk about sort of the difference between the cover art and sequential art in terms of if that's something that would ever appeal, or if it's something you've ever done. But let's talk about then. So you're doing advertising. Were you still drawing comic characters at this point?
Yes, but
so
not,
like for your own.
Yeah, but not as much.
Okay.
I was so busy at the time with. I mean, I was painting ice cream cones and cars and things like that. That was kind of my main focus. But there was always, whenever I could, I would do that. So I was in Seattle, working 80 to 100 hours a week. Because I was like starting out, I wasn't making much money off of it at all. I worked with the forestry department out there, drawing trees and leaves. Like that was like where I was getting my painting and trying to build my chops up. And then I was just doing stuff on the side. Like this was when Return of the King had come out, or one of the Lord of the Rings movies. So I was like, really,
It's pretty recent then.
Yeah. Some cave trolls and stuff like that. But again, we were kind of struggling out there financially. And oddly enough, the gentleman that brought us out to Seattle had got a job in Atlanta, Georgia, in the States, at the Home Depot in the corporate office, and they're advertising. Okay. So I don't know if you guys have the Home Depots out here, but it's
like B&Q here in the UK.
Well, they have these little flyers. Well, I was the guy that helped make those flyers for the Home Depot. Like I got a job there, and we moved out to Atlanta. And so I was just like, basically doing graphic design. But again, all this time, like, I think so many young artists, they think of like it's a step in the wrong direction to be doing graphic design and advertising, and I'm always encouraging that, because at the end of the day, this is all a business. I mean, my art, I'm trying to sell, and to learn how to communicate visually, to learn how to understand demographics, how to read sheets, how to understand where the market's going and how to play into it, are key components.
And also in terms of the advertising background as well, of being able to know exactly how to grab someone's attention instantly from that front page, which is absolutely your skill set on display on the covers.
Thank you. But yeah, no. So I was in Atlanta at the Home Depot. I met a gentleman by the name of Tariq Hassan, who worked at the Home Depot as well, but he was also part of the studio of artists. And he's like, well, I think you would be awesome. You should come. We're looking for a new member to help pay the rent. I think they were probably just looking at me more like, here's a guy to help us cut down on what we're paying a month. So he brought me over, and in the studio was George Gianti. He did Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Gambit, just American Way, phenomenal penciler, which is weird because I was a fan of his, over the years. Dexter Vines, the inker on Civil War, Hulk. He's done just one of the finest inkers in the business. Tom Feaster was there. There was all these there was some really cool artists. Jason Pearson eventually joined, which I'm a huge fan of Body Bags, and Jason is honestly one of probably the most raw talents I've ever seen. So anyways, I was in the studio. I started joining with them, and they're like, "Hey, would you like to? We're going to these cons. You should tag along with us." So it starts out, and I'm basically.
So you'd not been to a con at this point.
Not professional, not on that side.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes, I'd done a couple shows back when I lived in Indiana.
So I didn't know if you'd done the whole portfolio review thing. And
No.
You really were just going as a fan.
Yeah, I was just
going
just to nerd out, man. And so I would start going to these shows. And Georges and the guys were kind enough to basically be like, "Here's a quarter of a table. You can set up a couple things." And so I would go, and I had just some art that I had just done in the past. And as was the show, I started looking around, and I was like, okay, this is the advertiser in me, this is the business guy, the marketing in me, and I was like, okay, here's what everyone's doing. And at this time, now this was a while back ago, so this was like early 2000s, like mid 2000s. But the big, at least here, now, people were selling prints, but a lot of times what most people were doing, they were selling they bring one print to a show, sell a limited number at a high price point, or they were doing sketches. And I'm like, I can't compete with these guys. I can't compete with these industry names and generate money. But one of the things I also started noticing was like, I was going to Heroes Con down in Charlotte, and they would do it on Father's Day weekend. So on Father's Day weekend, the fathers would bring their wives or the girlfriends and their kids, and I'm like, no one's selling them. Every single person here is going, the dads are getting the big price point, but maybe the wife might want something, or the father wants to get the kids something, or something to that effect. So after doing that for a year, and kind of seeing that, I would go to Dragon Con again, I was just like tagging along, I was like, I want to start selling to them. I'm going to start making art for the girlfriends, start making art for the children, and because if the dad's going to spend $60 to $100 on a sketch, I'm not going to try and sell a $30, $40 print. I'm going to sell $10 prints, but I'm also going to bring 10 different prints to sell and be able to like cater to a variety of people. So as I started doing that, like I was starting to really like, things started turning around. And I remember we went out to Emerald City Comic Con, and I was out there with the studio. And now at this point, I was starting to get to a point where I was like, the guys were getting me a table. Like we would get one of those end caps, and I was like getting like an actual table. And one of the other nice things about what I was doing was, if everyone is buying, if you buy if I've got a $10 price print at this time when no one else was doing that, everyone's buying my thing, if nothing else, because they got $10 to burn. Well, now they're walking around with a billboard of my stuff at the show. And what had happened was enough people walked by Top Cow. Because at the time, and I should say this, during this time, I did get, I was approached to do work for White Wolf Publishing. So I did some like Vampire and a game called Scion. These are like tabletop role-playing games. And there was then, after that came out, I was approached by Wizards of the Coast to do work for Dungeons and Dragons. Honestly, one of the first things I did for them were Star Wars miniatures.
I think that was probably one of the first things I saw of yours, yeah.
Yeah, so I did some Star Wars miniatures, so that's how I got my Lucasfilm approval, like licensing. So yeah, so I was doing all that. So again, I kind of had built a little bit larger portfolio. And when I was in Seattle, people were walking around with my prints, and Philip Soblik, who was the editor at Top Cow, I guess eventually was like, he stopped some people and was like, okay, I see everyone walking around with this art. Who is this? Like, what is this stuff? And they're like, oh, it's this guy. He's over there. He's selling me the prints for like $10. You should go pick them up. They're great. And so he came over to me and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I explained what I was doing in the business model of what I was trying, after I found out who he was, like he's an editor. So I'm like, well, I'm trying to do this because, you know, I'm trying to capitalize on this market. And he's like, I've never heard anyone like think that way. Would you like to draw a Witchblade? And I'm like, why, yes, I would love to draw a Witchblade.
So you actually, you're one of the rare people in comics and comic art where they came to you rather than you actually actively seeking work in the industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never applied for a job in art. So Philip asked me to do a Witchblade cover. He asked me to do.
Was it very much in the style that you currently? Because you do have a distinctive style. Well, I mean the pencil art and the sort of the lines.
It was an amalgamation of that.
Very
I decided that at a very early stage that if I was going to work in comics, I wanted to look like a comic book artist.
Right.
I don't want to be a painter who paints comics. I want to be a painter who paints comic book art. Like, because I think it's a fine line. Like that hence the
You look
line.
confused. You look confused then for a second.
Well, okay, I can't out Alex Ross.
Yeah.
Like, he is a fine painter. Like, and I mean like fine art painter.
Yeah.
Not fine painter, that sounds, wow. I love Alex Ross, so I don't want that to come off wrong. I can't compete with that. But I can try and do what I do, but tweak what I do to make it a comic book style.
Sure.
So one of the prints I was selling at the time was an Art Nouveau Poison Ivy.
I think it's in there somewhere, but it may have
So,
run away.
when Top Cow asked me to do the Witchblade cover, I think it was 147. It was in the War of the Witchblades. So again with my advertising background, I sent them 30 thumbnails. And each one of them had a paragraph description of exactly what I was doing, why I was doing it, who I think this would appeal to, why we should do it this way. If they were looking at doing it this, then we could tweak it this way. And Top Cow was so impressed. They're like, okay, well, let's go with this Art Nouveau one. This is kind of what we were looking at. This is what we liked of your stuff. So it was all about, like, at the time, it was when Danny and Sarah were wielers of the Witchblade. So it was all about duality, but yet, like, harmony. Like, this was when the Witchblade was being revealed to be, like, a child of the Angelus and the darkness. So I wanted to, like, kind of play into that. So, I mean, it was ridiculous. It was all about, I tried to infuse H.R. Giger with Alphonse Mucha because they're conflicting styles, but yet I try to harmonize them together by making repeating patterns. I explained all this
It
thing.
sounds very much like, I'm certain everyone in the room is aware of the work of Drew Struzan, poster artist. It sounds right, because I've seen a documentary work with him, and he's very much a case of, although I'm an artist and I enjoy what I do, at the end of the day it's a job, and I'm here to supply a product to my client. And he does a similar thing with the thumbnails. So I'm guessing it is a case of giving them enough options which they can then call from.
Yeah, well, because one of my mentor out at the Art Institute, a gentleman named Bruce Sharp, always instilled in me, that is not my picture. That is that's Marvel's picture.
Yeah.
They just hired my hand to draw it. So I don't have any ownership of this. Like, it's not, and that's the way you should look at it, because at the end of the day, if Marvel wants Poe Dameron to have a...
Well, let's talk about your, I mean, I'd say the three... That's somebody's. No, it's somebody over there.
It's yours.
Is it? No.
Sounds like it's coming from the sea.
That is a fire alarm.
Fire alarm.
Which is... Shush you! Good grief.
It's heating up here in ice.
I'm so glad you were smart enough to come up with that. Shush. Where was I? No, I genuinely...
Poe Dameron, Marvel, and how Marvel...
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, the three styles that I think most people know you for at the moment are the Negative Space covers, the Marvel Star Wars covers, and also the Marvel action figure covers.
Mm-hmm.
Who came to who with those ideas?
The Negative Space is all me.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of Coles Phillips.
Okay.
Who was an illustrator back in like early 1900s. He did all these like beautiful women in like the dresses and the corsets and stuff like that, but it was all Negative Space, and I took influence from that. The Star Wars stuff, this is kind of a funny story. So at the time I was doing a ton of covers. And a normal cover, my strengths are in, I think, like capturing character, but not in dynamic posing, not in what would most people consider a normal comic book cover. So I was killing myself. I was battling 80 to 100 hour work weeks, 7 days a week, basically to get done with a cover, if not maybe 2 covers if I was lucky a week. Wow. My wife and my mom actually had an intervention with me, and they're like, you've got to cut back on, like, you can't do this anymore. Okay. And they were right. Like, I was failing miserably as a husband and as a father, and it really was like weighing on me. And just the way the world works, of course, 2 days later, Marvel calls me and they're like, hey, we got this new IP we're going to be able to start working on. Sign the NDA, and I'll tell you, it's Star Wars. And we've got something we think you'd be perfect for. Right. And it's something I talked to them about, just the desire. One of my dream gigs was always to do the official handbook to the Marvel Universe, right, which always just had the character standing there, and then a side shot and a back shot. And I'd expressed an interest of, like, if you guys ever bring this back, like, this is what I want to do. And then when they knew I was a huge Star Wars fan too, so they actually approached me and said, we would like for you to do, like, after our conversations, you should do these Star Wars action figures.
When did the light bulb come on when you suddenly realized that with all you have to do is look on Wikipedia and realize how many characters we're talking about, and then you just realize how many covers that could be, and then you turn to the missus and go, pick a college, because we can fund any school. Have you seen how many covers I could do here? This is just... did you think of it as this kind of massive revenue stream. All of these covered titles are there if you grabbed it. I just wondering whether
No, it was.
just went, ah.
It was weird because because we just had this conversation, I had to wait until my wife went to sleep to do the first 4 covers because I didn't want to let her know I took any more work because I promised her I wouldn't. So I actually did the first 4 action figure covers in secret because I thought she might force me on, she might leave me over it. But no, after that, I remember I went to do a signing in New Hampshire, and it was for the Star Wars, the launch party, and it was with the Jackson. And at the time, that was the big one. Everyone was really kind of goo goo gaga over the Jackson cover I did in the party variant. And I was just like, wow, I think we've really tapped into something. Star Wars is different. There's just no getting around it. You can say what you will about everything else, but there's something that I think Star Wars touches a nerve for a lot of people that's very, it's very nostalgic, especially for people of our age. But then as we started, the action figures started getting, and one of the things I noticed was that after doing the whole con thing, other people were starting to handle the same kind of business model at cons with selling the prints and stuff like that. So I basically almost stopped doing cons, but I'd had this idea in the back of my head for the longest time of man, I do all these exclusive variants for other stores. I wonder if I could do an exclusive variant for my own store. And I think that was almost kind of this watershed moment of starting to see the success of the Star Wars ones, and then saying, hey, at the time Marvel was only intending to do the first 10 figures.
Oh, right, okay.
And they'd actually offered, they're like, okay, and this is a little bit further on, but they were like, we've done the 10, we can stop now. Here's new covers for you to do. And I'm like, I would love to keep doing these. And they're like, are you sure? Because we don't want to burn you out. And I'm like, dude, this is special to me. I knew it was special to me before I knew it was special to other people. That's why I love going to these cons, because again, not going to cons, I don't get feedback from people. At the time I wasn't really much on social media. And so I was just doing it because I enjoyed doing them. Which is always, I think any artist would say is the best kind of art, right? Sure. You should do art that you like, and then hope that other people enjoy what you do as well. So the big one for me was when we did, so I like the Star Wars stuff. I knew that people were digging them just from people emailing me and Marvel being like, hey, people seem to be grooving on this. Yeah. So that was when, again, I had this idea because I didn't go to cons anymore, but for the longest time I was like, I'd like to do my own exclusives. I was like, I think Boba Fett would be a perfect character. Let's see what Marvel says. So I approached them and I said, hey, I'd like to do a store. I would like to buy a store exclusive for my store. And they're like, do you have a store? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you're the first artist to ever ask to do a store exclusive for themselves. So what I did was I had to literally start a comic book store. And I had to get a business license, and I had to go through all this stuff of well, in their defense though, there was no set, now they have all these things for artists to do their own exclusives.
And online SD stores and that kind of thing.
But at the time, there was nothing like that. So all of the SOP they had was designed specifically for just a normal retailer. Yeah. So I had to go through all that, which is fine. I was like, dude, the opportunity to do this is cool. I want to do it. And I think when we did Boba Fett, I remember we were sitting around and we were like, okay, if we can sell, C2E2 was 2 weeks after we decided we were going to sell Boba Fett. And we were like, if we could sell 500 of these by C2E2, that would be awesome. That would help us. I think that would be we would break even at that point. Or I forget what the number was, but yes, cool. So I launched a website with that, because I had to get my store and everything. So we didn't announce it to anybody. We were going to announce we had plans to have this big grand opening at C2E2 and announce to everybody what we were doing. So at midnight, we launched my site with Boba Fett in the storefront. At 12:03, my phone goes ding, and it was a sound I'd never heard. It was PayPal saying somebody bought it. I was like, okay. And then it starts, because I had to pull an all-nighter that night to get work done. And then it starts going ding, 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 ding.
Which point turns into a Geiger counter in the end.
Yeah. So I was literally expecting to wake up my wife and be like, dude, we sold 4 comics last night. This is awesome. I woke up and it's like, we sold 3,000 comics last night. To the point where within 36 hours, we actually had to pull the book off the site because I promised C2E2 I would sell the book at their show. And
you had no copies.
we had, well, thank goodness we had worked ahead to get 5,000 was the number we eventually were able to settle on with it, so I could bring them to C2E2 and have some to sell. And that caused a whole kerfluffle also. But so I was like, wow, this is crazy. And like, I mean, to the point where we sold, my point was $20 price point. That to me is a lot of money for a comic. The book was selling on eBay at the time, I think for 60. It's kind of fluctuated from there and gone up. And I remember Marvel called me. Someone at Marvel called me and they're like, your book is going for like $60 to $70 on eBay. You should probably jack the price up. And I'm like, no, that's not cool.
That's
like,
not, yeah.
It's $20. Like, if people can make money of it, God bless. Like, that's how it should be. So we ended up doing that, and then the next time around was, so I was like, hey, Marvel, I would love to do it, like the next day.
Yeah, I'd really like to continue to make lots of money.
So we, like the very next day,
Yeah.
and I was on the phone, and I was like, okay, what's it gonna cost me to get all the bounty hunters? That's not gonna happen, John. Okay, how about Blue Snaggletooth? That's not gonna happen. So basically, it came to me that they decided there was like some craziness behind this. So like little behind the scenes story was, I believe somebody new at Lucasfilm had come in with the whole Disney acquisition and Marvel and working with them. And the person, and one of the first mandates was, we don't want to oversaturate Boba Fett. So literally, had I not signed the contract, if I had waited 1 week to sign that contract, I would not have been able to do Boba Fett because they didn't want to oversaturate the market, which you can understand, obviously. So it was like, a blessing that I was able to do that. But the problem was after that, like I think there was some hesitation in wanting to allow me to do more of them. So there became an element of negotiation that I had to do, and it was very much like at the time they were after doing Boba Fett, they're like, honestly, we'd really prefer if you don't
just dial it back.
Yeah, which again, I didn't want to do another one immediately. I was from the get-go, I'm all about long-term sustainable business models, not quick cash grabs. And one of the saddest things I've seen that I think a lot of people, other people that have done exclusives, is they saw that mine were selling for $60 to $70, so they would buy an exclusive and they'd put it on their store for $60, $70. Well, that's great, they would sell out, but then the value would just drop on the secondary market, and because it dropped on the secondary market, people lost faith, and then like that started hurting more and more people.
Yeah.
With mine, I always kept it at 20, so we did a black and white Boba Fett. Basically, they agreed that I could do a black and white Boba Fett after the full color one. And I put it online, and I was like, and we announced it this time. We announced like 2 weeks in advance, hey, we're doing this black and white Boba Fett. Come to my store at midnight. You know, we're assuming midnight it'll give like the night to be able to sell. Hopefully, you know, it's black and white. We don't think we're gonna sell, so we only ordered 3,000. I ended up selling out in 13 minutes on it. And but thank goodness, because to me, like the customer comes first. And so one of the policies we implemented was, anybody, if you bought the full color Boba Fett, you can come to my site like 4 hours before the sale, and I will guarantee, you can buy one copy of the book. Guaranteed. I will guarantee you one copy of the book moving forward. And when we sold out in 13 minutes, obviously there was a lot of people that were upset about it, but we were able to facilitate the people that helped invest in me and support me from the full color Boba Fett. And then that became a moment of, this is like, there's something to this whole Star Wars thing.
Well, I think it's everyone who reads the Star Wars books and just generally has followed Star Wars for the last 2-3 years, they know that there's this kind of this teat that they can just keep squeezing on, and there's this sorry for the young ones in the audience, sorry about that. But yeah, there's this definite touchstone that people can return to when it comes to Star Wars. Something I don't think we've really touched on, and I think we'll just dial back a little bit in terms of your working process, because I don't think we've touched on that. I presume you're digital?
I color digitally.
You color digitally?
If it were up to me and I had the time, I would pencil and ink everything on Bristol.
Wow, okay.
Which I do as much as I can. Working 2 to 3 covers a week does not allot me a lot. There's a lot of stuff I have to do digitally now, more than I would like to. You know, obviously, like.
So you 2-3 covers. Yeah. How long does it take you to do? Say, for example, Were the Star Wars covers?
A Star Wars cover takes me about 40 hours to do. So I have to turn them around in about 2 days.
Keep practicing, kids. Jeez. Okay.
Well, I mean, the beauty of the Star Wars ones, though, is like, you know, I've never made the Star Wars logo. I did that digitally, and I've been reusing it ever since. For my originals, that's a problem, you know, like, because I've had people that are interested in buying the originals, but I don't want to sell just a picture of Luke and then the side illustrator. Like, I want it to be a full finished piece. So, I mean, like, you can see, like, that's what my originals look like. So I don't actually ink everything. I actually leave a lot in pencil, and I use gradated pencil values. So I use a 2H or 3H and an HB to value out what the pencils would look like. So I'm doing this, I do as much as I can with that, but like I said, unfortunately, my schedule requires a lot of digital work.
I mean, what is your schedule in terms of, I mean, I can imagine you're slammed. Is it Marvel and Hasbro, your main
Yes,
people?
yeah, Marvel is, I've not had a day off of Marvel in 10 years. Like, honestly, this is the longest I've ever not worked.
Well, you say that you didn't approach. How did Marvel get in contact with you?
Well, okay, so back to the Witchblade thing, right?
Yeah.
So I sent Witchblade this War and Peace novella of ideas for the thumbnails, and Witchblade, the people at Top Cow thought it was so fascinating, they worked out an interview with Comic Book Resources. And it was called How to Create a Witchblade Cover. And it was basically me going step by step, explaining all the thumbnails, and then why I was doing everything on the cover as I was building up for that first Witchblade cover. So as I've been told, as the story goes, an editor by the name of George Ballard at Marvel was asked to go look at a new Top Cow artist. And in that book, he was flipping through, and on the last page saw a preview of my Witchblade cover. He went online to see if he could find out who it was. He pulled up he found the how to build a Witchblade cover, and he read it, and he's like, this is like, again, I think it was one of those things where it was like, this guy, he understands. This is a business. He's trying to say something with this. And so he contacted me and he said, hey, would you like to do Iron Man? And I was like, why, yes, sir, I would love to do Iron Man. And that was the Iron Man Art Nouveau piece that I did. And that was the first cover I ever did for Marvel. And like I said, I have not had a day off from Marvel in almost 10 years.
Was that first piece almost like a test drive for them, or did they kind of know?
No, I'm sure it was. And you know, looking back at it, thank God they saw something more in it than what I gave them, because they really dug it and they were happy with it. So yeah, from there I did, the next cover I did was that New Mutants cover you've been showing on the screen for the Heroic Age. And like I said, it never really stopped. Like I always tried to approach it as that. And back to our thing about the sequential art, like I respect the sequential artists so much, I don't want to consider myself a comic book artist, because that's a disservice to them.
Is it something that you've ever been interested in going into?
Oh yeah, yeah. I did a couple 2-page spreads for Top Cow, like in the back of Witchblade books. But it almost killed me. I did a 6-pager to introduce their new universe when they were kind of relaunched with the artifacts and stuff like that. And it was brutal.
Was there anyone that you turned to for advice to do the sequential pieces, or was it a case of, tell you what, I'm just going to dive in and just do it?
I kind of unfortunately had to dive in. I mean, I'd pick people's brains like Georges and Dexter and Jason Pearson and stuff when I was down in Atlanta on how they went about stuff, and I tried to soak up as much information. But I didn't do any of the sequentials until I moved up to Indiana, which again I'm now back in. We decided after we had our children we wanted to move back to our hometown, a little quieter, slower pace of life. It was awesome. But no one was around to tell me about how to do art. Or have field comic book. So I mean, I could call them, but I lost a lot of that just synergy that occurs when you work in a studio. There's a reason why artists, I think, work together in large studios, and it's because you can learn so much that way.
Cool. I just want to check on the time, because
22.
I do want to get some questions from you guys as well. If there's anything that you do want to ask John about the business, about his style, about the way he goes to create. So have yourself a think about any questions you want to ask. I want to talk about, certainly in the terms of the cover art and variant covers market, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of guys out there that are now doing the variant covers. Mm-hmm. And while we don't have the 1990s business model of like people buying covers for a £5 and next thing you know, selling them for 70, 80, it doesn't have that kind of resale value as much as I'd really like it to. What is it in terms of in making that kind of standout, and how packed is the market for the variant artists? Because you have your Scotty Youngs, you have yourselves,
Yeah.
and your Alex Rosses of the world. I mean, how packed is it, and how is it to make yourself stand out in that regard?
Well, I think finding a way to make yourself stand out is important. Having an angle is really important, right? Like before, my angle was just like I would like to believe I was the guy that whenever Marvel calls me, they will call me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and be like, dude, we need a cover by tomorrow morning. I'm the guy. I became that guy, and sometimes it's not fun, but I earned that right to be that guy because I was the guy when they needed something, they could call me, and I was honored to be that guy. Because
do they come to you with the general idea of a cover? Because that I can imagine just having to create something off the bat at that kind of rate, to have that in your back catalogue to create something.
At first, yes, they would kind of come to me with general ideas, but I think as I kept doing it and trying to show them like, here's my ideas, like this is why I think this one would be successful. I was able to start earning some trust, which is the big thing, and it's one of those things where the more you do it, the more faith they start getting in you, and also I think there's an element of proving yourself to the fans because there is so much competition, there is so much out there that you want to have the opportunity to let them know that it's like I'm not gonna waste your time on this, because it is and. Our industry it's got such a passionate fan base, and as somebody who's a fan first, always, I understand that, and I think over the years trying to develop that, like what's the hook, and the negative space thing being like, okay, let's try this and see where it goes, but also not wanting to, like the Art Nouveau thing. When my first cover for Witchblade was Art Nouveau, my first cover for Marvel was Art Nouveau, and then being like, I don't want to get pigeonholed. Like, I don't want to be the Art Nouveau. Like, there's enough other artists that are the Art Nouveau guys. I don't want to just be that. Like, I don't want to be part of that crowd of people. And that's when the action figure thing kind of came along. It was like, it had been done. Like, that's another thing. Like, I don't want anyone to ever think like I invented that. The first one I ever saw was a Scud variant. But it was something that no one in the market had done for a while, and I thought was an opportunity, especially with Star Wars, because it works for Star Wars. That's the other thing. Like, I think so often people try and force things to work instead of allowing like what's natural. Like, Star Wars action figures are like that's a thing. That's a natural, and Marvel's relationship with action figures is very natural. The idea of when we were talking about doing the cards, the trading cards, that feels natural because again, like I have a history with the Marvel Masterpiece series, so like it works. It makes sense for me. It doesn't feel like we're just trying to shove something out there to sell, because I think people can smell that, and that's just always been something really important to me. That I believe I stand by pretty much everything I've ever done. Cool. Like I believe what I'm doing. I can. You got your people, I'm sure, that will be like, action figures again, but I can argue why I enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, the style which I think you are most famous for is this kind of very shaded with the black lines, the very Drew Struzan kind of styling. But I also like it when you do step out of that. I mean, I have brought a couple of covers for you to sign, and because I am, like I say, a fan of your work. But one cover I didn't bring, because I actually didn't connect in my head, was actually one of yours, is the C-3PO cover, because it is a different style of art. It's kind of like it's more painted, it's more textured in terms of the C-3PO cover. Do you, I don't know if I'm explaining my right, because you're looking at me very weird.
Okay.
Do you like exploring different art styles and?
Well, so okay, like advice for young artists.
Yeah, sure.
Time. Like, when I started out, I was very experimental with what I was willing to do and what I was able to do. Because nothing's more infuriating to like. Don't ever say to an editor, "Oh, that's not my." If the editor's like, "Hey, you should work on your hands or make the hands bigger," and say, "Well, that's not my style," because dude, you don't have a style. No one cares about your style. Like that's not a thing. You have to earn the right to have a style.
Sure.
And after a while, like that was something I really worked hard at, was being experimental, hearing what people like about my, when I would go back when I was going to cons all the time. Okay, this is working. This print is selling. Why is this print selling? What am I doing different? Okay, well let me try this, see how this works. Oh, this one didn't work as well. And getting that feedback to develop what I felt was a voice for myself. Because again, I used to be a Jim Lee clone. I used to be, and there's certain influences you have, but you do have to start finding your own voice. And as you find your own voice and you do actually get that style, now I think it's important to have that style because that's what people are asking for. That's what Marvel is wanting to sell. Like if I decided to do an action figure, a Star Wars figure, and chose not to put a black line around the figure, people are gonna be like, that's not one of those, it becomes very apparent. Like that's, they have to be all related, and that's part of what it is.
And but that's the cover I was talking about. I'm talking, like the brush strokes and the.
That's not mine.
Isn't it?
That's not my cover.
I'll shut up now then. That kind of really did screw that one up.
That's a beautiful cover.
I wish I could say that. I wish I could have taken that out of the collection. Well, there you go. That kind of In that case, all of this is fantastic, apart from that one, which is crap. So we'll just, that was utter garbage, and we won't refer to it again. Okay. Do we have any questions from our crowd in terms of anything that anyone wants to talk to John about? Any advice that you'd like to get from him at all? Anyone wants to stick their hand up? Front of the centre, sir. Take it away.
I've got all of your Star Wars.
Thank you very much.
Except for that darn Lucy black and white, which everyone is, a lot of people miss it. Do you know, as Marvel said, whether they're planning to release or what they want you to do one for every single figure that they release out of the original canon range?
Well, that
is that their plan? Because you've obviously done wave 1 of the series of figures, and now you're in wave 2, which is the Empire Strikes Back.
We're also starting to hit into the original characters as well from the new comics characters as well.
Yeah, well, I think there's. I have told them I am down forever. Like, dude, if we want to get into the droids figures and then go into like, I'm down. Like I said, I love this. I truly do. I think that's just a question of do people still want them, or are people still going to, for Marvel, rightfully so, it's a business, and as long as people support it, I think we'll keep moving. I think we've done a lot of really good things as far as expanding outside of those original figures. The Anakin one, for example, like initially, there was discussion of should we put Anakin on the Phantom Menace packaging, the red packaging, and even draw the little like voice decoder thing that they had with it. We decided, basically as a compromise, to put the Phantom Menace logo instead of Star Wars. However, we realized like that's when I did the Kylo, no, it was Poe. I put a Force Awakens logo up there, but that wasn't official, like an official logo because I had to put it inside the Star Wars thing and blah blah blah. So Lucasfilm was like, just put a Star Wars logo there, and that's when we basically came to the conclusion that I don't do Star Wars action figure covers. I do homages to the Star Wars action figures, and therefore we have the freedom to keep that like classic packaging. And as we're expanding into the new characters, keep that like everything together. But I mean, I think that there is opportunities to start to do the other ones, and anytime I get a chance to do exclusives for my store now, I do always strive to do a character that we wouldn't see maybe in the normal line. How can I work in somebody, because there are certain rules and regulations. Like I can't just do, I've always wanted to do Ahsoka Tano, but there hasn't been a book that has really had Ahsoka, or they could argue Ahsoka should be in. So as things develop, we'll see if that kind of
How often do Lucasfilm step in?
Every time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, in a good way. But I mean, it's their IP, man. Like they have to approve everything. And I gotta tell you, man, like they've been so good. I've working in advertising. I guess I became so afraid of client feedback, and everyone at Marvel Disney and Lucasfilm are so cool with their like feedback. They're very specific. They're very like, and at the end of the day, it always makes it a better piece. Like, one of the hardest hurdles I faced on the Star Wars stuff is that Lucasfilm owns the likeness rights to all the actors. So it's not drawing with Marvel. You draw Captain America. If it looks too much like, I've drawn one that looked a little bit like, I guess, Chris Evans. I didn't use him as reference or anything, but they're like, you can't do that because we have to change his face. And it's kind of like, my argument was like, well, actually, Chris Evans looks like Captain America, not the other way around. But anyways, the point was that with Lucasfilm, it was such a weird thing to be like, no, like, that needs to be Harrison for Han Solo. And that was really cool, like, because I feel, with those characters is one thing, but with a lot of the secondary characters, I've really enjoyed trying to, like, pay tribute to these actors, like, that are on the con scene, that, like, that's not just some jerk face, that is really the guy that played Helder Spinoza from Bespin Security Guard,
That was actually going to be one of my questions as well when it comes to the other alternative, the newer characters, which obviously don't have any actors as reference. When I spoke to John Cassidy about the his run on Star Wars, he said, I turned around and said, so where do you reference, or do you have a body of reference? And he turned around and said, thank goodness, there's actually quite a few photographs of Harrison Ford out there. So I actually have quite a bit of reference to come to.
Yes.
But when you have the newer characters, where do you go to in terms of?
It's a little bit more hodgepodgey.
Yeah.
Like, it's not really like I'll have friends that I'm like, because like I don't, obviously they don't have licensing rights with Lucasfilm that they have a likeness to, so I can't just straight up draw my friends.
Sure.
But I use them as like kind of a basis, and then I just kind of manipulate it to tweak it to make it.
We had a question. I was going to say from Ollie, but Ollie seems to have vanished. Yes, sir. Would you like to?
Are you doing a Captain Phasma cover?
That has been a question a lot of people have been asking. I would love to do a Phasma cover. That's something I've got to talk to Marvel about.
Well, I've got the new book out. I thought actually there would be one on the shelves.
Well, I was not aware it was coming out so soon. I was kind of waiting for that and to hear if they were going to ask me to do a Grand Admiral Thrawn for the new Thrawn series too. We'll have to wait and see. Thank goodness it's not a one-shot. It is a 4-issue miniseries. I'm not sure when issue 4 is going to be going to press, so maybe I need to be in touch with them here across the pond.
You could do like a variant or something anyway.
Yeah, well,
I can actually feel your other half going, we're on holiday, dude. Can we please just have?
So here's the conundrum I'm facing with that, for example, is I have made a vow to my customers. I will only release 4 exclusives at $20 a piece. Like, I think that's fair. I don't want to overdo it. I think that is, if I look at the secondary market, that seems to be a fair price point. That seems to be a fair amount, but I also don't want to ever have people feel that I'm trying to take advantage of them. So the idea with the Phasma is, if Marvel is not interested, and if I'm able to secure it as an exclusive, what do I do with it? Do I hold off on it till next year? I don't know, like, and that's something I don't really want to like speculate on because like there's so many variables. But if there's a demand for a Phasma, at the end of the day, I want you guys to get what you want. I'd like to think I'm not a greedy dude, so it's like how can we work it out, man? Like, that's kind of the thing. And it seems like if I look on my social media, Phasma is
Hands up, who would like a Phasma cover? Yeah.
No, there we go. That's cool.
Should have taken a picture and sent it off to.
There you go. Yeah.
Just send it in and just let them know. So what is? I think. Do we have any more questions? Because we are into the final stretch now before we start wrapping things up. Yeah, we'll go for a final couple of questions. Yes.
For bringing it back to your old style and when you were with Top Cloud with Witchblade, what would you say was your absolute favourite one that you worked with?
Actually, that first Witchblade cover, I think, might be the best piece I've ever done. Like, honestly, it really said what I wanted it to say. I was able to, I went all out on that cover. And even by today's standards, I look back at that cover very fondly. One of the other fun things with Witchblade is all the covers I did that were front and back covers, I was able to hide. I think I mentioned this to you earlier. I hid secret messages in them. So if you, screw it. It's old. No one's gonna know. the idea was, again, the marketing side of me. I talked to Top Cow and I was like, we should hide secret. She's a detective now. We should hide secret messages that if they type in the code on the website, they can download concept art that I've done or sketches and stuff like that as a way to like, engage with fans. The one that no one has discovered yet, and again, I don't think they ever will. So here's the big surprise. There's one where Sarah is kissing a gentleman, and he's got these weird like vine things starting to grow out of his back that are like that are about to attack her as they're embracing. Every thorn on the vine is a 1, every leaf is a 0, and if you go with the binary code of what each vine is a word, if you count the alphanumeric value of that, it spells L-O-V-E, love, and that was the code that if you typed in, you got the code. Special thing.
So there you go. And now you can go and search that one out for yourself.
Now it's ruined!
No, man! Excellent stuff. I think we just got time for one more question, then we're going to have to move on. Yes, sir?
One of the Star Wars covers, did you ever do one for the Princess Leia Slave Girl one? Was it that?
Have you done Slave Girl Leia?
No. And
Would you like to?
it's not a question of what I would like. It's a question of, no, you know, honestly, like even before, I would say like it was probably not gonna happen, especially after Carrie Fisher's passing. I feel that she didn't like that, and I think it would be disrespectful to even ever try to do that one. I joked before that if they ever fired me, that would be like my salvo of like, take that, you're Slave Leia. But it's the lamest like vengeance plot ever. Let's see Danny Boyle make a movie of that one. No, so like, yeah, no, honestly, like out of respect for Carrie Fisher, I don't think that will ever be done.
That's a very respectful answer. I think that's fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's safe to say we will continue buying the Star Wars covers and indeed all of the work that he brings out, because he really does bring a fantastic voice to the variants on the shelves, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. Ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise. John Tyler Christopher. You'll be able to find him upstairs on his table, and if you travel to Paris in the next couple of days before he does brace himself to take the flight home, that's where you'll find him. That's where you find him in the next couple of days. One more time, John Tyler Christopher. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Dan Slott panel is up next. If you are here, we are not vacating the rooms, so you can stay, but I do know that we have people that are coming in from the back. So, yes, back the panel within the next couple of minutes. Thanks.
But I got most of it, I just haven't transcribed it.
Oh, okay.
It needs to be out by then.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah. All right.
You have a good time on this.
Dude, how much class?
No, it's great.
Absolutely good talk as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you.